Hi, everyone, and welcome to Momentum Boost. I'm your host, Adrienne Gold-Davis, and I'm thrilled that you decided to join us today. So June here at Momentum has been the month where we celebrate sisterhood, and certainly the Momentum movement was built upon it. So the word sisterhood is always thought of in a broader sense. It's not exclusively bound by blood. In fact, many would say that a sisterhood is as much a choice as it is an accident of biology. Sisterhoods are formed around shared goals and values, around shared experiences, and around the building of trust. It's a state of home. It's a place where you can truly be yourself, and you're encouraged and mentored to be your very best version of yourself. It's a place where you feel seen and heard and valued. Sisterhood is like a woman's city of refuge. It's a place where everyone can be safe and sound. So in the safety of our sisterhood, we tell one another stories. And those stories, well, they become the narrative of our goals and our aspirations. Well, tonight, we're going to be teaching you how to make your story count for all it's worth with a little help from some incredible experts. We're going to learn how to craft our giving stories and build a foundation for our family's legacies. Because, my friends, the stories we tell our children shape them into the people that they will become. So for heaven's sakes, let's tell a story of generosity. Because of all the stories you might tell in your life, let being a generous giver be the most important one you pass down. So this boost is the next in our Generous Generation series, which was made possible by the Staenberg Family Foundation. And joining me are three incredible guests. The first, Amy Holtz, is the co-founder of the Jewish Future Pledge. It's a worldwide movement working to ensure that vibrant Jewish life continues for the generations to come. In 2016, Amy was named one of the 50 most influential Jews by the Jerusalem Post. Our second, Terry Kassel, is the head of strategic human resources at Elliott Investment Management, LP. She also serves as the director of the Paul E. Singer Foundation, and she's a board member of One Table, the Israel on Campus Coalition, Onward Israel, the Jewish Funders Network, and the Jewish Food Society. And of course, we all know Lori Palatnik, Momentum's founding director. Please join me in welcoming Amy, Terry, and Lori. Hi, ladies. This is rarefied air. I feel like I'm in rarefied air. This is you three are the quintessential givers, the Jewish movers and shakers. And I don't think of anybody better to spearhead this conversation. So I want to begin with a more generalized question that I think will help our viewers understand who you are and what you stand for. So let's begin with your personal philosophy about giving. If we are trying to develop a generation of generous people, how and why do you see that as a key? And Terry, if it's okay, I'd love to begin with you.
Sure, I'm happy to. I don't know if I have a personal philosophy of giving. I think that Jews and their relationship to Judaism is based on obligation. And obligation includes justice, giving, responsibility for each other. We're a tribe. And we've had a tough go of it. So I see identifying gaps and filling those gaps in the broadest sense of the word as my moving philosophical approach to philanthropy. I don't think of it as, I was born to give or I give to be born or any of that. I wasn't born wealthy. I didn't have a foundation. There are 100,000 ways to give. And you have to pick your own particular passions and what you actually care about. And then you have to give whatever is required. Sometimes it's a check. Sometimes it's showing up. Sometimes it's connecting. Sometimes it's building a movement like Lori did. and the creativity and the evolution of your giving is what makes your journey, I think, meaningful.
Wow, Dianu, that would be just about it. That was fantastic. Yes. Amy, let's go to you now. How about you?
So my philosophy on giving was actually shaped by Lori Palatnik.
Ah,
I was sitting in a Torah class and I was blown away by the wisdom of Torah. Couldn't believe I didn't know all that wisdom my whole life. And she pointed out one day how America, everybody wants their kids to be happy. And America is all about rights. It's all about give me, give me, give me. Judaism, as Terry said, is all about obligations. So it turns out, if you look, when I looked at my life and I think back, when I consume, my happiest consumption is going to Neiman Marcus and getting a great dress at 75% off. Great dress, great price. I feel good, but for 20 minutes. When I think back on my life and I look at the people that I helped or where I made a difference, that happiness still stands with me. So it still lasts. So I realize the path to happiness is through giving.
Lori, I've heard you say so many times that givers are happy people. So tell me about your philosophy.
Listen, takers are happy at the moment. Like Amy said, like when you get the dress, you get a little bit of a rush. I'm happy, but it's not long lasting. So takers are happy at the moment, but in the long run, it's givers who are happy people. And we're taught, like in Pirkei Avot, and I'm so happy. It's very nice, Amy, that you're giving me all this credit, but I'm only teaching the Torah that is Terry's, that is Amy's, that is yours, that is everyone's. And it says that that the world stands on three things: Torah, wisdom, life wisdom; avoda, service; and acts of kindness, acts of loving kindness. So real chesed, loving kindness and giving, is not what I feel like doing. It's you have a need and I want to fulfill it. And we should be looking we should be looking for needs. Abraham's tent is open on all four sides. That's why the chuppah is open on all four sides. We should be looking, who's in need? What are the needs? And if I see a need and no one's doing anything about it, it means I'm responsible. It doesn't mean that you have all the answers. It's very nice, Terry, that you said that I started a movement, but believe me, it was myself and 7 other women and then a whole team, because I saw a need and I knew it had to be fulfilled. And I'm responsible to hopefully inspire people to do it. You don't have to have all the answers, but you have to be the one who stands up and says, Hineni, it's up to me.
Hineni, here I am. Here I am. You know what, Terry, I want to go back to something that you said. You talked about obligation, and you talked about, and really reiterating what Lori just said, about looking for where the gaps are and filling in those gaps. How do you think we're going to teach a generation who have been raised and nurtured in it's about me and I need to be happy and I'm just not happy? How do you teach obligation in a climate or an environment where it's no longer we the people, it's me the person? Do you have any on that?
Well, first of all, I haven't been completely successful myself, so I'm learning all the time. But I think everything starts in the family. Everything starts around the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kids don't listen to what you say. They watch very carefully what you do. So if you get up and go to work every day, the kids think that that's what you do. If you talk about issues at the table and argue about values, the kids think that's what happens around the kitchen table. I mean, Jews are particularly adept at argument. Too often we argue more among ourselves than against our adversaries. But look, Jews are the chosen people. And what are we chosen to do? We're chosen to act. There's a wonderful saying that my rabbi used to say at the end of every service. Maybe every rabbi says it at the end of every service. I don't know. I just know when I was a kid, he used to say this all the time, and he probably stole it. But it says, pray as if everything depended on God, and act as if everything depended on you.
Wow.
It's a good combo.
It's a beautiful combo.
I love that.
You've clearly done that. Yeah, Lori, where do you think that comes from? Just give me the Torah basis. Is that
No.
Moses?
Listen, Nachshon ben Aminadav had to walk into the sea before it split. Like when they called out, they prayed, they said they were going to give up. The men were like, divided into 4 camps of what to do with the sea. And Nachshon walked in, and then God split the sea. So we have to take that action. We have to say, like, it's up to me, and I'm going to do my very best. And then God responds in kind.
Amy, I'm thinking about something that was born out of your passion for giving. Could you just tell me what this Jewish Future Pledge is?
So the Jewish Future Pledge, we are about passing on leave with the charity that you leave. A large portion of it should be left for the Jewish people. And we're about sharing your wisdom, values, and life lessons. Whether you're leaving $10 or $10 million for charity, we're asking that people consider giving 50% or more to Jewish causes or the state of Israel, because if we don't help ourselves, nobody else will. And it's about, the next generation is about so much more than sharing your money. It really is about sharing your wisdom, values, and life lessons. The research actually shows that kids who know their family narrative are healthier because they feel less alone. They feel part of something bigger than themselves, part of an intergenerational story. So that's what we're all about, leaving for the next generation. Judaism emphasizes it's not just about the here and now, it's also about taking care of future generations.
Yeah, there's a wonderful story in the Talmud about that. Do you know the one I'm speaking about the man who plants the carob tree?
Yes, about Hani, the circle maker. He comes across a old man planting a carob tree, and he says to the man, "When will this tree bear fruit?" And the man says, "Not for 70 years." So Hani says, "Well, are you going to get the benefit of this fruit?" And Hani said, and the man said something that really drives us at the Jewish Future Pledge. He said, "No, but I found a fruitful world because others had planted it for me. And just as my ancestors planted for me, I too am planting for my descendants." So I love that story, and it really drives our work.
It's incredible. So tell me, Terry, I want to ask you, you had a chance meeting in the airport with Amy some time ago where I know a conversation happened that inspired Amy. And, when we talked about it earlier, you had to kind of stretch to remember it. And yet it was a pivotal moment for Amy. So I wonder, how much do you think about just the way you move through the world is the trigger to stimulate people wanting to emulate you? So tell me.
Gee. I don't know. I'm not sure I would want to emulate me, but I think conversations that are authentic and real about what's troubling you and what the possible strategies are. So I think that the conversation, the best that I can recall it, almost every conversation I've had with Amy over the years has been about how do we protect and save the Jewish people. The Jewish people are over the centuries, over the millennia, challenged. I guess it's all going to work out because we're the chosen people, but we got to work at it. And so there are 100 things to do. And Amy and I were bemoaning the fact that some of our children are not aligned. And some of the campuses are teaching the wrong stories. And they're not even factual, but they may be politically correct. And, all this idea that the Jews are part of the white privileged racist oppressors under the new critical race theory wasn't current when Amy and I were having that conversation, but is an example of a misperception of what our duties are and what our history is. So I think this is a moment that is literally calling to every Jew to stand up, not just for the Jewish people, but for the rights and values established by the Jewish people. And I think it's a critical moment right now. The partisanship, the adversity, the enmity around the kitchen table is maybe not unique, but it's an exaggerated moment. And I think we have to push back and make the pendulum start swinging, in the other direction.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And Lori, I'm thinking about the decision to begin the momentum movement and how you were around the table with 8 very diverse people, and that it was within that diversity that you found some unifying theme. And you also have a lot of, thank God, a lot of children, and they're all different as well. You managed to raise a family of, with very firm Jewish values. Obviously, you're married to a rabbi, and yet all of them have their own path, respected and honored and valued by yourself. How much of what Amy and Terry are telling us, I mean, I do know that this is a unique time, and I agree very much with what you're saying, Terry. We're in a focus moment. How much of the movement of momentum do you think is part of this tipping point, or could be part of this tipping point?
This is what Amy is saying, and what Terry is saying, like the idea that our kids are watching us, that, Amy's saying, like, you have to make a pledge for the future. And Terry's saying it's around our kitchen table, and that our kids are seeing, like, how, when somebody asks us for tzedakah, do we grudgingly give it, or like, oh, I can't believe he's calling again, or like somebody's at the door, like, what a nerve. Do we do it with pleasure? Do we say thank you for giving me the opportunity? Or our kids are watching the attitude of giving. Can I tell you, my kids, 2 of my girls, their college essay, what your kids write on their college essay, it can often be very reflective of what they are putting forth, of who I am and what I believe in and what they feel moves others. Both my girls, and they didn't talk to me about it, and they didn't talk to each other about it, wrote the same college essay about the same story, obviously in their own words. And it was about a single mother who we took into our home with 2 little babies, a baby and a toddler. It was the daughter of a friend of mine who got into some trouble. And we took her in, we thought it was temporary, but she was with us for over a year. And they both wrote on their college essay how deeply and positively it affected them. And believe me, they suddenly were like, rocking babies to bed and dealing with it. And people are in our house, and it was a complete act of giving. And they saw it as this is who I am. This is what reflects me and my values.
Okay, I'm going to ask all 3 of you again, because I don't feel like we really covered it. If the Jewish value proposition is obligation, if tzedakah, if giving is righteousness, but a righteous obligation, and we're in a world now that doesn't celebrate obligation, how do you think we can rewrite that narrative and make it sexier to do something because we were told to, rather than because we want to? Lori, yes, go for it.
Can we switch out the word obligation and insert what we teach in Momentum, responsibility? Responsibility. We're responsible. So that's a whole different, I think it reframes it, because obligation, so a responsibility means I'm rising to it. I'm not being burdened by it, I'm rising to it.
I like that. What do you think of that, Terry? Does that speak to what
That's a perfect substitute.
Okay, so why do you think, as 3 women, 3 mothers, and 3 industry leaders, what do you think happens psychologically, emotionally to people when they feel responsible versus, say, obligated? What do you think happens? And doesn't that have something to do with about being chosen, being the chosen people? I mean, I've often heard it being said that, what was that old limerick? It's not, how odd of God to choose the Jews. It's not so odd. The Jews chose God, right? But Lori, I've heard you say that it's like being the eldest child.
Yes, chosen. Often, a lot of Jews feel very uncomfortable with the concept of chosen people because it smacks of elitism. Chosen doesn't mean we're better. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that we're better. It says we were chosen to be a light unto the nations. And as Adrian says, I often teach on Momentum, that, is anybody here an oldest child? Terry, Amy, Adrian, any of you the oldest? None of us are the oldest, which is probably reflective of.
We're probably all middle children, let's be honest.
So when oldest child, if you ask, when people put up their hand, like, who's the oldest child? Like, did you have more responsibility than your siblings? Yes. Were you expected to be an example to your siblings? Yes. But did you have a special relationship with your parents because you were the first? Yes. And that's us. God loves all the nations. But the Jewish people, we're like the oldest child. We do have a special relationship with God, but it comes with responsibility. And we are supposed to be an example to the world. If the world is messed up, it's because we're not doing our job. We have to be that shining light. And like I said, all boats will rise.
Lovely. Any thoughts?
I also just feel like it leads to happiness. Like when you are responsible, when you give, it feels better. I just think America has it wrong. It's not by receiving that you're happy, it's by giving. And when you accomplish something, it feels great.
Yeah, I think that's true. Have any of you read Morality by the late, great Rabbi Jonathan Sachs?
No, but I love him.
Okay, what did you think of that? And, because he does weigh in on some of these concepts, don't you think, Terry?
Yeah, there was an assumption in your question that I want to challenge.
Good.
And the assumption was that this particular generation may not feel the obligation or the responsibility, in Lori's words, to give. And it's our duty to give them that feeling. And Amy's point is that it will lead to a happier life for them. Lori's point is that it's their responsibility as Jews. And I would make an argument that I think that the younger generation, many of the folks that I know on an anecdotal level, are very committed to the not-for-profit world and very committed to giving. They just have the wrong lens where the need is. I mean, they're very interested in giving to African families to get them electricity and water, and they're very interested in fighting the fight for Palestinians. And they're very interested in working hard on poverty issues in America, poverty and mitigation and alleviation. So I don't think that our kids are missing the gene of giving. I think what's happened is that America is such an incredibly welcoming place. And even post-World War II Europe is a much more welcoming place, although that's changing, for Jews. And therefore, the special condition of Jewish otherness is not felt. They're so assimilated that they think the Jews, and probably the Jews in their schools and their summer camps and their colleges, are doing just fine. So the Jews don't need anything. It's the men and women of color, or it's the transgender population. Now, I don't have an opinion about whether or not you should care about those folks. That's great. The more, the better. But our obligation is the memory and perpetuity of the Jewish people. And that's unequivocal. And that has to start, because that's who we are. And at the end of the day, the world reduces itself to tribes. And we're part of one tribe. And if all we do is argue with ourselves and denigrate our values and don't elevate our values, I think we'll be in trouble in terms of the future of Judaism, not in Israel, mind you, but everywhere else.
Wow. And especially considering you said earlier that this is a pivotal, a highlighted time. I once heard a rabbi say many years ago that anti-Semitism is one of God's techniques of keeping Jews Jewish. It's that, when we are not so welcome anymore, when we start to feel the existential threat that maybe, but this generation seems to not be responding in the same way to their own import that we are to others. So when you, for example, Amy, think about your future pledge, how much of the ideology about, it begins at home, charity begins at home, family first kind of thing, do you think about when you write notes?
That's exactly what Terry just said is completely true. Terry, I was blown away. That was perfect. It's if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else will. That is why we're asking people to give 50% or more to Jewish causes of the state of Israel, any Jewish causes they want. But if we don't, it's up to us to take care of ourselves. No one else is interested. The other 99.9% of the world.
Wow.
And I also want to say that Terry's right. It's like our spiritual DNA. We are innately givers. And you should be proud when you walk into hospitals around the world and you see the plaques, and the plaques have Jewish names on it. But as everyone is saying, no one is standing in line to help the Jewish people. It's always, listen, charity begins at home, family first. The Jewish people are a family. And there's nobody's going to help us unless we step up. But we also know, like, why should there be a Jewish people? Why should we make sure the Jewish people go on? Because again, we have play a very important role in the world. We have a responsibility. We are supposed to be that moral light to the nations.
You know, Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel, said that love happens in concentric circles. First, your relationship with yourself, and then concentrically beyond, you know, to your family, which includes the land of Israel and the Jewish people, and beyond and beyond and beyond. And that if you have a poor relationship with your self concept, then you will also, it will reflect in the way you move outside of that. So what you just said, Lori, this idea about understanding who we are, where we come from, and feeling pride in that answers that need. You know, Lori, you have this story about baby blanket.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing it?
I have to tell you, I've never shared this story publicly. And ladies, with your permission, I would like to share it, and especially this week, and I'll tell you why. So my mother-in-law of blessed memory, when my children were little, she crocheted blankets for them, not for them, for their future children. So she one of them she made a pink one and a white one with a blue fringe. And she gave me these blankets. And each one came with a note. Okay. And each one was addressed to one of my children and their future spouse. And she said, keep these. And when they have their first child, give them the letter. And if it's a girl, give them the pink one. And if it's a boy, give the white with the blue fringe. So I packed it up and I put it in the cedar chest. And then, of course, years later, my children started getting married. And my son, Moshe, was the first one to get married. And she was too sick, my mother-in-law, to come to the wedding in Israel. And their first child, which was her first great-grandchild, was born just a few weeks before she passed away. And I took out the letter and gave the blanket to them. And this is what the letter said. I had never read the letter before. To my grandson, Moshe, and my future granddaughter. You are only 6.5 years old at this time. She's speaking to Moshe. And when I was in Florida this summer, you had seen me making these blankets, and you thought it was kind of silly to make something so far in advance. I am not a youngster now, and I may not be here when you have your first child. I know at this time you will really appreciate the blankets. You will have a part of me as I made these blankets with love. I hope I will be at your wedding and around for your first child. Have a good life and much nachas from your children. Love always, Grandma Mitzi. Wash the blankets in a net. She was very, very practical too. And it's dated November 29th, 2000. I remember her making these blankets when she visited us in Florida. And my kids were so little. Can you imagine? She had the foresight to see that one day that she's not going to be here. And she wanted them to be wrapped in her love. And this week, the second baby was born just a few months ago. There she is. And they named her after my mother-in-law. And this Shabbat, this week, they're going to be having a kiddush and speaking about my mother-in-law of blessed memory and the baby. And so there's her sister holding her, and it's a Huva and Rena Miriam. The Miriam is after my mother-in-law of blessed memory. So I could not believe my mother-in-law did this and had the foresight. And it made me think, like, what are we leaving our children? Of course, there's money, there's values of, we want you to continue with the tzedakah that we've given, and we hope you're living it. It's so amazing. I'm really, what can I make? What can I do? What can I model? There's many opportunities for us to pass on something for future generations. And this simple act of love and giving. My husband's a rabbi. He always says that he's blown away at funerals, that the night before, when he sits with the family, tell me about your mother, your father who passed away. He says the big grand things you think they're going to talk about. Oh, they brought me to Europe, and oh, they bought me this. He says it's the sweetest, simplest things. And he literally said to me once, he goes, they talk about like the little blanket that she made. Like, these are the things that our children remember. These are the stories they pass on. These are the values that they pass on. And we need to pass them on with love.
Oh, that is so gorgeous. That is, Terry, that's so similar to the story you told me in the airport. You were writing letters to your grandson. That is what motivated me with the Jewish Future Pledge about sharing your wisdom, values, and life lessons. We must do that. That's so beautiful.
Ladies, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of the thousands of people who will be watching this. I just want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and your strength and your hope and your belief and your clarity. And God willing, we will be crocheting, all the talking points together so that we can wrap the next generation up with the kind of love and generosity that will make a difference. I thank you so much, and I hope that we can all get together again in the future and have another conversation.
Thank you for hosting us.
It was an honor.
Bye,
Thank you.
And thank you for everything you guys do for the Jewish people.
Oh, thank you once again to the Staenberg Family Foundation for their support of our Generous Generation series. And please do me a favor, join us next week on Monday, July the 5th at 8 p.m. because we're going to begin our next monthly theme. And that theme, well, let's just say that it is time for us to go into unity and mutual responsibility, which we talked about a lot tonight. Unity and mutual responsibility is the bedrock of a peaceful society. And it's a place where we can focus on what unites us rather than what divides us. And, we Jews are a very diverse bunch. Like, do you realize how diverse your Jewish family is? So what better way than to go to the newly renovated Museum of the Jewish People, that's the Anu Museum, and founding director Lori Palatnik will be back with us, thank goodness, while Anu's CEO, Dan Tadmore, will give us a tour showing how we, the Jewish people throughout time, have come together and remained responsible, there's that word again, for one another. So for me, Adrienne Gould Davis, and all of us at Momentum, please remember, as we learn and grow and give together, that the highest form of wisdom will always be kindness.